If you've been swiping on dating apps, you'll notice one thing. There are plenty of single mums out there. Now, in this podcast, we're going to be looking at both sides, whether it's an advantage or a disadvantaging dating single mums, and whether it's right for you. Online, especially in the red pill community, they're totally against the idea of men dating single moms. And on the other side, there are groups that are saying it's really important for community, for nature, and for protection that single men date single mothers. Regardless of which side you're on, we're going to be exploring the benefits, the pros and cons. Or maybe you're a single dad who may have the belief, like I did after my divorce, that who'd want to date me? I come with a lot of baggage. So if you've got any of these thoughts, stick around for this podcast. And welcome to the Nice Guy Show. I'm joined with Ari and Chuck. They're both life coaches helping men with solving so many issues regarding love, sex, and life. So guys, I'm going to kick off. Should you date single moms? Let's go with you, Chuck.
I think it depends on your age. Again, like if you're 18 and you're dating a single mom, you're probably doing pretty good. Yeah. if you're 45 and dating a single mom, you're probably also doing pretty good. I don't know. My opinion is that I get that there's baggage that comes along with it, but I also feel like, well, and maybe this is because I'm was a single dad, that of course, the women in my age bracket at that point in time, when I was in my 40s, most of them, if not all of them, in fact, there was one, I think looking back on my dating life back, there was only one woman I went out with who wasn't a single mom. But she had never been married and she had never been in a relationship that was longer than 9 months. And to me, that was a red flag. So that was a bigger red flag than her having children. But yeah, I personally, I think there's a lot of benefit to it, and I see more of an upside than I do a downside. But that's just my opinion and me personally.
All right, thanks, Chuck. What about Yari? As you're on the dating market at the moment, single, are you going for the yummy mummies or are you staying away from them?
I'm going for the yummy mummies, and that's how I refer to them.
Of course you are. You
and they appreciate that. Would you like to be my next yummy mummy? No, I date single moms, not exclusively, but I think there is some upside to dating them, meaning they can relate to being a parent. They've probably had to grow because of life circumstances. They were married, they're raising kids, so that there's a maturity there or there's a maturity that may be there. I mean, I think it's a lot of ifs, so being a mom can entrench some of your patterns and bad behaviors, or it can really grow you, just like with being a dad. So there's a lot to evaluate when you're dating a single mom. So that's something that I think we've got to talk about is, what makes a single mom a potentially good person to date or a good partner.
Yeah. It's definitely a good point. And I've got a list of, the pros and cons of dating both. And in my experience, when I came out of my divorce, I kind of kept away from single moms. I didn't want the hassle, the stress, the baggage, because I was working out my own process. I was working out my own shit. And I already had kids. I didn't want to get back into another relationship where my bandwidth is used up in managing other kids because I've already got my children. And I was really conscious about that because going through a breakup, a divorce, I wanted to make sure that I was doing that well. So if my energy and focus was on the kids, then there was a part of me that felt really a lot of guilt. Is here I am spending a lot of time with my children, but now I'm away from them, and then I am now playing a dad role to these other kids, and I'm neglecting mine. So there was a lot of guilt that came for me, and I opted to date women who didn't have kids because it was the fact that I didn't had to experience any guilt, and it was easier. Logistically, it was much easier than dating someone with kids. So, what kind of experiences have you had when you've been out with single moms and also non moms, like women without kids as well? I know, Chuck, you're married and
Mhm.
you've been in a long term relationship, but what was it like when you were dating?
Yeah. Well, and I was just thinking as you were talking about thinking back to that time in my life. And for me, one of the things was I kind of suddenly found myself single. I mean, it was a bit of a blind side, and it was um, and so I was, I always liked being married. I always liked being a family. And so for me, when the divorce came, it was like, it wasn't just that I lost my wife, it was that I lost a family. And so I think for me, one of the things that was real attractive was like this instant family, you know? And so there was, and again, I'm not saying this was healthy. I was not in a healthy place back at that point in my life, but I was attracted to women who had uh, children and even younger children than mine. More like the 5, 6, 7 years old kind of thing like that, because it was like, oh, I can still be an influence to the children. The flip side of that, and I think the dangerous side of that, is you become attached to the children, and you also, because if you're dating somebody, and let's say you're dating more than, I don't know, a month or 2 months, there's at some point you're going to get introduced to the children, and at some point the children are going to see you be around quite a bit, and at some point they're going to get attached to you, and you're going to get attached to them. So if you do go through a breakup, which I did, it's not just devastating from the standpoint of like this relationship ended, it is like this plural relationships ended, you know? And so for me, it was probably, more painful to go through a breakup after dating a single mom. Now, that didn't stop me from doing it because, again, I think, when you get to a certain age, I was in my 40s, most of the women that were single out there who were in my age bracket, they were they typically had children. But I, I think it's like, you just have to go into it with your eyes open and know what you're getting into and make a decision for yourself whether or not it's right for you.
Yeah, it's so true. As you were talking, I really like I come from a family, extended family, like a big extended family. And I really like the idea of, like noise in the house. There's people, there's that rustle and tussle of children, and gardens busy, barbecues busy. So I really enjoyed that. When you mentioned about introducing them, you're introducing someone that you're dating to your partner. So any of you guys, did you introduce your date to your children, like within a month or two? Or how long did you guys wait?
I've actually never introduced someone I'm dating to my son. And the longest relationships I've had have been about 6 months.
Wow. Did she ever say, when am I going to meet your son?
Well, one of the women that I dated, and she was not she was not a single mom. Um, she bought a gift for my son probably within 2 or 3 weeks of us dating, and I felt uncomfortable with that. Um, I felt like she was moving things too quickly. Like, I liked that she was interested in my son and that I was a dad. But that felt really uncomfortable for me, because if I give this gift to my son, how do I explain where it came from? And now I've got to talk about someone that I'm dating, and so I've just been very careful, or maybe guarded about that. About
It wasn't a picture frame, was it, with a photo of you both? Like that. Here's a present. I've had that. I've had that. A woman has given me a gift with a picture frame with us two in it.
Yeah, so I think it's a red flag if someone wants to introduce you to their kids within a month or two. I think that's a little quick, in my
Okay.
opinion.
Why?
Especially
What makes it a red flag?
because I think it's advancing the relationship quickly, and it takes more time to get to know a person, to see if to see what they're like, just to date, to see if you have fun with them, if you're aligned in your values, what they're like in different situations. You know, if you're getting introduced to kids, it's moving you out of that initial kind of romance period. So that's my feeling about it.
How long do you think you should wait before you introduce your children? I mean, what do you have a time frame, or do you just kind of
Well, it's beyond
I-
6 months at the moment, right?
beyond 6 months? Yeah. Is that
I mean, probably at 6 months, if you feel like you're going to progress the relationship, that might be a good time. Maybe even a little bit before that, but I'm just hesitant to let my son attach to someone new before I'm clear about where I want this to go with the person. I mean, you can't always protect them from loss or disappointment, but I would rather them not be introduced to lots of people that I'm dating, so it's less confusing for them.
Okay.
I think that's
What was your
some
experience,
wisdom in
Chuck?
that. As far as like introducing the kids, I don't remember the exact time frame, but I think it was fairly quick. I mean, it was just within like 2 months, I think, of dating. Part of it for me was I wanted to introduce my daughter, because my daughter has special needs. You know, she has autism, and I wanted to make sure whoever partnered with me, you know, it was a little bit of a test. Like, okay, how are you going to do with her? You know, so there was a little bit of a two things of like, okay, I need you to know like what I'm dealing with, and if you decide to stay with me, what you're going to deal with, and I needed her to understand, the woman I was dating, to understand like this is a package deal. The two of us come together. So it's a little bit, and with me, it's like she's not going to move out of the house anytime soon, and she's not going to, you know, she's always going to be top priority in my life. You know, so you need to be able to deal with those kind of things. So I think my experience was a little bit unique in that way. So it made more sense to kind of upfront to be like, hey, here's a huge part of like in your own decision making of whether or not you want to be in a relationship with a single dad who has a special needs daughter. And I think with that kind of came, you know, getting introduced to her kids pretty early as well.
My experience was mixed. After the breakup and divorce, you know, I heard a lot of stories like, "Oh, you should introduce someone you're dating so early on." But I did a mix of both. So there were some women I dated. I'd introduce them for several months, and there were some women I dated. The guys saw me go out. Who are you going out with, Dad? Yeah, I'm just going on a date. And one of the things I really wanted them to see is that, one, Dad is competent at dating. And the second thing, I wanted him to see that from choices, so from quantity came quality. because I wanted to show that, I'm going out, I'm assessing, seeing the girls, I'm having a social life, I'm getting out there. And then some of the girls that I was dating, they met because it was part of my lifestyle. So I'd be going out, the kids would be going out, uh, and they met the girls. And one of the things I was really worried about is the kids really getting attached to them. I mean, they were young. Some of them, they were about 7, 8, and then 4, 5 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old. What I was surprised about is that the girls that I did date for 2, 3 years, when things did end and they asked, what's happening? And I said, look, things have ended. They were like, okay, cool. That was just part of life. They had their mum, which was the source of their connection. They had dad as a connection, but they also knew that there was an ever changing, there was a part of people come and go in life. And what I noticed was that my boys became really attached to them, to some of the women, and some of the women were really nurturing, really caring. I was so surprised of how nurturing and caring they were. Even they didn't have their own children, but they were so warm, so caring, so loving. They'd hug them. My boys would sit on their laps. We'd have days out. But when things did finish, they understood the fact that some things, some chapters will close. And
Yeah.
I asked them, I said, do you miss that person? And they're like, yeah, we do, but they weren't so heartbroken about it. They weren't so,
Weren't attached.
this was my biggest fear, is like, if the girls didn't show up and they were like, yeah, life's good with them or without them, life's good.
Yeah. No, it's pretty healthy then. Yeah. I also wonder, like, age wise, because Ari, I know your son is still pretty young.
He's
Their
almost 10
ability to,
now. So
okay, but the ability to understand relationships and breakups and all of that kind of thing, I know Julia, my daughter, from my wife. She was 15 when I met her, and she's going to be 30. So I've known her half her life. And just joking around with her yesterday about, I've known you half your life now, and but she had seen her mom date, and her mom had actually been engaged before, and she was really attached to the family that my now wife was her fiance's family. And I never asked her about what it was like when they broke up, but she had gone through a lot of breakups, like seeing her mom and dad break up, seeing her mom break up, seeing her mom dating, and all that. So I think in the beginning she was a little bit nervous in terms of like attaching to me, but she was also very pleasant, and we got along really, really well, and we still do. But I think at that age of 15, she had a little bit better understanding, because she had had some experiences with, her parents splitting up, and then her mom having relationships, and then those not working out. But I would say, without question, like, she's one of the biggest benefits of marrying a single mom right there. Like, she's an amazing person, amazing daughter, and she made me a grandfather twice.
Yeah. So I want to go through some of the advantages and disadvantages of this. So when I went on dating apps like 10 years ago, I noticed that there weren't that many single moms around. I mean, there were, but not as prevalent as is today. So society is definitely changing. There's a lot more single mums and dads about, and it's less of a taboo now. And with the advent of online dating, you can see that there's less shame around this as well. So let's look at the advantages. One of the advantages is that you already get a ready-made family. So that takes away that stress of like, okay, I've got to find somebody, select somebody, then procreate with them. Maybe it's going to be right. Maybe they're not right for it. So you've got a ready-made family. The responsibility helps you grow as a man. one of the things that I remember Jordan Peterson was talking about as one of the things that we as men need is more responsibility that can help us evolve. So we need challenges in us, struggles in us that really help us grow. A single mom will already bring this lot of connection, there's love, and there's belonging. And I mean that the healthy women that you select. Of course, if you select unhealthy women, then you are going to get a lot of this opposite. They will also rich in activities and broaden your friendships, social circles, and network. So you'll see that a lot of guys, they're usually quite isolated, but when they are around other moms are usually quite well connected. There's a richer life that you experience. There's more parties, there's more barbecues, there's more occasions that's happening. I know some guys completely fret over this, but I think there's such a importance of having community dynamics. You learn about family dynamics. There's a lot of problem solving that you have to overcome. Having dating a single mom, also you have a family you never had, but you craved. So there might be some kind of like longing and connection that you never really got. And it's an opportunity for you to experience that. She's often more mature and knows what she wants. So there's a lot more about that woman who's raised children. Again, like one of the things that you said was that it helps you mature, that responsibility. So she's going to have a lot more principles, more systems. And again, I'm not saying that all single moms would, but I think there are some great single moms that have, being a parent really helps you to formulate yourself. There's a built-in charge of a positive male role model. So you can be a role model for other kids as well. There's more stability. There's less time for games and action. And it's genuine appreciation if you values your effort as well. So these are the advantages. Let's go into some of the disadvantages. Well, actually, before we jump in to the disadvantages, any of the advantages that you want to comment on or you like or you've experienced yourself?
I think I've experienced most of those. Yeah. I think that the thing that, and again, it's kind of like the plus versus minuses. And we also have to kind of understand like it's on a case by case basis, right? But I think there are a lot of really good positive advantages. So I'm ready to see what the disadvantages are so we can weigh it out.
All right. And again, like you said as well, that there's going to be grays, there's going to be parts in the middle as well, and there's going to be some good women. What I want to do is I want to bring more of rather than black and white thinking, and I think black and white thinking is very egotistical thinking. I want to bring a nice gray area so you guys can be a bit more fluid in your choices as well. So let's look at disadvantages of dating a single mom. So you got to sacrifice your time, your money, and energy with little or no reward. So it's not just spending time with her, you've got the children that you have to take up. There's a risk of you being used as a provider than to be seen as a lover. There's going to be a lot of conflicts over parenting. There could be a lot of conflicts over parenting values and principles. So you might value something like discipline, rules. And I know this one, my ex, she got involved with another guy. He was very much system based, very much discipline based. And she was more like, yeah, let's go with the flow. And they two really conflicted on raising, our kids. There's a potential to be outcasted as a role in the family, friendships and family as well. Kids will always come first. So you might feel neglected. You'll have less freedom to travel, do date nights and adventures. There's possible conflict with the biological father, so he may not like your presence. There's also a fear that you and your partner you're dating and you guys fuse, you guys connect 6 months, 8 months down the line, and the kids absolutely cannot stand you, right? Your kids might not be able to stand them. So there's that conflict as well, because you've introduced them after you already fused and connected. It's hard to break away if it's bonded because of guilt. So a lot of nice guys have a lot of guilt and shame that it can make it really hard for you to say, okay, end the relationship, because there might be some emotional blackmail from the children. Oh, we want you to stay together. You pull into family drama, draining your sanity, your energy, and your finances. There's limited flexibility around her schedule dictates yours. There's less privacy and intimacy, so kid limit alone time. Because if she's looking after the kids, it means probably at some points there'll be less time for you. Also, pressure to commit faster than you might do. Jealousy or rejection from kids if they don't accept you, and your own goals and dreams may take a back seat. So you've got both sides here. And again, there's always something in the middle. So what do you think? Where are you guys leaning? Did you change your mind, or are you going,
Well, I think one of the things you've talked about so far is just the opportunity to connect with her kids. And I think I've probably downplayed that, to be honest. Or the downplay the opportunity for her to connect with mine out of my own fear that it's not going to turn out well. So that's actually starting to shift my perspective a little bit. That being said, I think there are a lot of risks. And I think, as we've talked a lot on different episodes, to date consciously takes a lot of self-awareness. And I think that's lacking in most people nowadays and most daters. So, for me, a lot of it comes down to like, does this woman, have the bandwidth to create a satisfying relationship with me? Like, does she have the time bandwidth? Like, does she have the time availability? Like, a lot of single moms, have very little time, and I have my own time constraints, so that can make it difficult to create a relationship. Does she have the emotional bandwidth? Or is it all occupied by her kids? Or is it all occupied by her baggage from the old relationship? Does she have the bandwidth to be nurturing and flirty and appreciative of you? Or does she have the bandwidth to take care of herself physically, like her fitness and her health? So that takes a lot of consciousness for any kind of parent. So those are some of the things that I'm looking for in a single mom that I'll date. I think, if you have the responsibility of a household and kids and can do that well, that shows a lot of maturity and a lot of character, and that could be really attractive about a single mom. So, like we've talked about, I want to do a careful evaluation phase before I get more involved with a single mom.
So would that assessment be different to if she didn't have kids?
It's similar. I just think that having kids is challenging. It means that she has to be really intentional about how she uses her time and energy. That's a requirement for me for getting involved with a single mom. So I'm looking for that right off the bat. And that's what I would suggest to men who are considering dating a single mom.
There's a lot of guys that you hear about. They say, well, I ended up getting into a relationship with a single mom, and now I'm just burdened with a lot of responsibility, and she's kind of like pushed that on him. She's not picking up any of the pieces, and I'm talking about the other side of this as well. So you've got moms that will just take the guy, his resources, his effort, and then she just wants an easy, problem-free life. And then she puts everything on the guy. And I was reading about this guy. He said, I'm only in my mid-30s and I'm dating a woman. She's got 2 kids with 2 different dads, and she's lazy. She does F all in the house. I'm paying all the bills. I'm paying the rent. I'm paying the shopping. She doesn't even go out and work. And he's already fused in this relationship. Now we don't even have sex. So I'm just there as the wallet, and I'm looking and running all the errands and everything, that she's doing nothing about it. So there are those guys who get trapped into these relationships as well.
Yeah, it's a nice guy trap. Like, and you can, a lot of nice guys, whether you're dating a single mom or just a single woman, you settle for scraps, and you hide your own wants and needs. And then, what you're describing, where he's adopted all that responsibility for a woman, then you're going to build up resentment, and it's a huge mess. This is why, like, you have to make sure that this woman, whether she's got a kid or not, can meet your needs, can be a contributor. Having a child is no excuse for that.
Nice guys also, can come in with kind of like the white knight type of thing of like, oh, she's a single mom and she's struggling, and I can go in and I can be the rescuer and be the hero, and then she's gonna love me and never leave me because I've given her so much and done so much for her. And I think that's when you do find yourself like you were mentioning, Faisal, and kind of trapped in this relationship. And I was thinking about this woman I dated. We went on 2 dates. First date was like a coffee date. The second date, she said, well, I can date you, but I have 2 kids and I'm a single mom. So you'll need to pay for everything, including my childcare for the night. And should have been a red flag, but I was like, okay, well, but okay, that makes sense, So I did, and I went over to her house, and her house was just a pigsty. I mean, there was just shit all over the place. Her kids were running around and all that kind of stuff. And then when we were on our date, she tells me that she has 2 other kids that are older, but she's not allowed to see them. That her ex like petitioned for full custody or something like that. And I was like, okay, well, see you later. Like the red flags were flying really high. But there was also this part of me, I noticed it was like, okay, I can deal with that. Okay, it's not yeah. Okay. Give her the benefit of a doubt that whatever happened in that previous relationship, like, it wasn't her fault or whatever. And I think that's the trap that the nice guys fall into, is we see something, we see these red flags. Instead of running, what we do is we go, I can fix that. She's a really great woman if, she would just clean up her house, but like data says, the way you find them is the way they are. And so, I think if there's a second date like that, there's I remember another woman that I went out with on a second date, and she was telling me about her ex and how, they were having this giant conflict and all this kind of stuff. And it was a similar kind of thing of like, okay, I don't need this drama in my life. But I think the awareness is that if I feel like I'm the rescuer, if I feel like the white knight, if I'm making compromises to say, I can fix that, or that's not that big of a deal, those are red flags within yourself to be able to say, okay, that's you. Okay. It's not her, it's you.
So true.
You don't have the emotional intelligence. You don't have the nervous system regulation to be able to look at it and go, because I think as nice guys, and this was also one of my problems, was I'd be with a woman, I would see these, and you don't see them necessarily at first, but I would see these red flags, and I would compromise and go, well, it's easier for me to just deal with this problem than it is to go through the drama of breaking up with her and then her being upset with me and her, like maybe being angry with me and those kind of things. And so that's where my nice guy stuff showed up in my dating, was around staying in a relationship that should have ended, on the second or third date. But I also, was able to see there were, go through it a number of times to get to a point where it's like, okay, it's better actually to break up with this woman after a second date or third date than it is to like get sucked into this relationship. And, 6 months later, I've made all these compromises like the guy you were talking about. And now I find myself in this sexless relationship where I'm paying for everything and doing everything. And I'm just
Yeah.
yeah.
You're getting screwed without getting screwed, right? That's
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
and the fixer is something that's so prevalent in the nice guy. And as you were saying, nice guys don't tend to see red flags. I think they're colorblinded. What they see is a problem and I can fix it. So they see problem and they'll feel like, I'm going to get some attention. I'm going to get some validation. I'm going to get some points. I'm going to get some sex from solving this problem. I am going to be this virtuous guy that comes in, saves the world, and I'm going to have all my needs met because I saved the world. And these guys fall into this trap. I've done this many times as well because it just gave me a sense of worthiness, a sense of belonging, a sense of achievement and recognition. And you think you're going to get all of those things. But what you're doing is you're just completely ignoring the red flags and you're just getting yourself fused or connected into a hot mess. And when you're in that hot mess, all that's going to happen is that you're not going to have the balls to get out of that hot mess. And you are going to then be resentful for the fact is that you haven't got the balls to get out of that hot mess. And you're just festering off resentment. And the relationship is deteriorating until she normally makes the point of like, I can't take this anymore. Or when you hit rock bottom. So I've seen that cycle go a lot of times in my, coaching practice. I see that I've done that myself. So I got a list of like the things that men should not date single men, the guys who shouldn't date single men. So one of the things that you mentioned, Chuck, was, if you're 15
Single
years
men
old,
or single mothers?
Single mothers. yeah. So single men shouldn't be dating single mothers, right? So one of the things I always recommend in my coaching practice, guys who come in, hey, Faisal, I just want to go out, get dating. And when the guy's not had a lot of dating experience, a social experience, I definitely recommend him to do the difficult thing. Here is something I'm going to say, and I might get a lot of stick from single moms on this. Single moms can, and I'm saying can, not always, be a lot easier to date than single women without kids because they are looking to settle down, looking for a provider, looking for the safe option. And the guys are going, okay, well, there's a less resistance. I'm going to get a relationship. I'm going to get sex. Yeah, okay, the cost is going to be, I'm going to have to look after the kids. So a lot of guys I see settle down, settling very easy. The bar usually for single moms is not as high because she's saying that at least I have somebody in my life. I'm not saying all moms do this. I'm not saying that. There are some moms who have really good standards, but I'm saying on average, you'll go through dating profiles. I just need a guy just to look after me and my kids. She's frustrated. She's tired, maybe doing 2 jobs. She doesn't want that anymore. So guys who have really poor at entry and exit, they should stay away from single moms for now because they'll get infused and they'll get rid of experience. Also, guys, it's because it's easier to date single mom and get the attention. They're not really building the skill to be able to date somebody of, say, who's more difficult in the sexual marketplace. So, for example, here's something, again, I might get a lot of stick for as well. women who date younger men, they go on about, oh, you know what? It's so easy to date younger men. The reason why, because those younger men, it's incredibly difficult to date somebody as a guy who's high on the sexual marketplace. Older women, right, they've kind of passed their sexual market peak. So therefore, they are not as fussy in the way of maybe hookups or getting that attention because they're looking for that attention. And the guy that was really giving them attention is that these young guys who can't get laid. This is the same kind of challenge is when it comes to passport bros. They go to different countries because they are seen as higher status. So the resistance in being able to succeed in that market is much easier than it is to succeed in the market where in their home. So single moms, older women, they can offer some guys much easier options, and sometimes they take the path of least resistance. And again, I want to delve more into this because I've only given you some snippets of this. What are your thoughts on that?
Passport
Was it?
bros, that's a big topic in itself. But I
guess
see the connection there.
Sorry. Yeah. I think I guess the question I have is that a bad thing? Like to go someplace where your perceived value is higher?
Yeah, because you're avoiding the challenge. So, for example, guys are going, well, I'm not gonna. It's really hard to date in the US. I'm gonna go in Thailand and date women. Well, your status is because I was talking to this one guy. He says, I'm white. I've got money. I'm from abroad. I go to Thailand. I just walk in and women are proposing to me. I said, okay, of course you're not going to get a lot of shit test. Of course you're not going to get challenged. You bring some resources and some options that they don't necessarily have. I said, when you're in the US, she's going to challenge you a lot more. She's going to test you a lot more. Your competition is going to be much more fierce. So the man who has to go through that competition, imagine the development that he would have to do, the fight he would have to do.
He's going to be more competent as a result of the testing and the challenge. Is that what you're saying? And are you also saying that bodes well for a relationship? A man who has gone through that testing and is a stronger man?
Let me give you an example. There's a guy who swims at his local swimming pool. And then there's a guy who swims in the sea. Sometimes is really rough. Sometimes is heavy waves. Which guy is going to be a stronger swimmer? Like generally, I'm just saying. More competent, handle more situations.
The guy in the ocean, obviously, but they both have the same result, which is they swim.
Yes,
because I think with the difference between men and women want to date. You said something about a guy who wants, he's like, I want to date. And I was thinking, no, you don't. You want to get laid. Like, and when a guy says he wants to date women, he's basically just saying, I want to get laid. Women, when they say I want to date, they're basically saying, I want somebody who's going to take care of me. Again, sweeping generalization here, but I think that, so if my resources are such, because like, let's say a gay guy like Jeff Bezos, he doesn't have to try. Look at the women that he dates, right? So it's like going to a place where you're Jeff Bezos. Like which one? So I see what you're saying, but I'm also wondering, like, is that really like is the end goal to be like, I can handle any challenge and swim against every single wave and get beat up and thrown around, but I can handle it? Or is it more like, I just want to go swimming and have a good time?
Okay, well, what's going to build your self-esteem and your self-worth? Because it isn't something that
hot woman.
Or well, that's not true, because when you have a hot woman, the ego is quite satisfied. So, for example, when I went through this journey of, becoming more competent, eventually I was getting laid a lot. I was having a lot of sex with really hot women. But the real problem is, and you see a lot of guys who go through this pickup and who do really well at pickup, then they go through this kind of like arc, but they feel empty inside. It's because I've not earned my results. It's just given to me. So there's an element of, we need that challenge. We feel good about it. It's like the guy who just takes a pill, loses weight. It's unearned progression. And that is not what fills up self-worth, self-esteem, self-respect, is because I've gone through some challenges. The guy who's done the hard work. So for example, the guy who's done the hard work in say the most difficult environments, he can maneuver and handle himself a lot better than someone who's just done some training in really soft areas. That guy hasn't built resilience. That guy hasn't gone through the toughness that the environments go. So when you put him into a difficult situation, one, it will limit his options. And you want to have a capacity of a lot of options, because the more options you have, the better you can then discern from those options. So for me, you want to build.
Are you also saying that if you develop that competence in dating, that does that bode well for the long-term success of the relationship? Is that man more able to deal with challenges that come up in a long-term relationship too?
I think that applies in not just long-term relationships, but any situation. So I want a pilot who's gone through some real challenges in his life, real hard training, to be in charge. I want somebody who's sweat on the battlefield, as I say, in any kind of field. They've had a lot more experience. I want somebody who's competent in many situations, because that's really real confidence. Being able to go to Thailand doesn't build your confidence. I've dealt with guys who've gone to Thailand. They're, oh yeah, I'm great. I'm getting all this attention. Okay. But at the moment that she challenges him, it throws him off track. He doesn't know how to handle the situation. That is unearned success. To me, when you have unearned success, it doesn't give you inner confidence. It gives you fake ego confidence. So these are non-substantial stuff. Man who's done some real hard work, like for example, in the UK, I was going out, socializing, dating in the most difficult situation, most difficult nightclubs and bars and environments. And you can then, when I went to any other place around the world, I had the muscle work, the training that was done. So a lot of guys will just, you know what, those weights are easier. I'll just pick that and do that. And that'll be pseudo confidence, pseudo self-worth.
So the message here is, don't date single moms just because they're easier to date, because they may be needier. That's a recipe for not developing your own competence as a man, as a dater, as someone in relationship. And it doesn't bode well for the future health of a long-term relationship with that woman.
Yeah. I would say so. Because I think it always gives him the skill sets that he needs in order to enter good relationships and exit good relationships. I mean, entering relationships, that requires a lot of stamina. That requires a lot of rejection. So when you're going to places where it's easy and it's on the play for you, you've not dealt with rejection issues. You've not dealt with failure. You've not actually learned about success. You've just had it's, for example, in business, they say that the real test of a businessman or a businesswoman is when they overcame failures, when they built something that was difficult. Someone who just happened to ride the wave of just like the AI or something, that's not a business person yet, because they need to be tested. And those who consistently overcame challenges, problems, difficulty, they're the ones who then consistently are worth investing in. So that's one of the things I worked with investors, and said investors, gave me this lesson. It was like, we look for people who've really gone through difficult challenges and they made a success out of it. not because of an easy environment, because that could have been just luck, right timing, right place. Right. One last message before we wrap this up. What would your message be, Chuck?
My message would be that if you want to date single moms, do it with your eyes wide open, know what you're getting into. And that whether they're single moms or single non-moms, they're going to come with their own set of challenges. And you're going to have to learn to deal with those.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah, I think it's I think this last point we hit on is crucial. Don't view single moms as sort of this easy option. And you want, I think one of the themes that we always come back to on the podcast and with nice guys is that to have a good life, it requires consciousness and growth. There's no easy path here. And learn from our mistakes. We're three divorced men who've taken the time to date consciously and get into conscious relationships, and that's the only good option. There's no easy option.
Yeah, I like that message. And I want to reiterate what both of you said. It's becoming more conscious, becoming more self-aware, whether it's a single mom or a single woman. That's not your focus. Your focus on is learning internally and challenging yourself, pushing yourself where you tend to be more avoidant, where you're hiding, where you're playing small, where you're going into more cowardice and courage, and to really lean into that and really get support, guidance, because learn from other people's mistakes. That's what the wise do, is that they learn from the mistakes and they take shortcuts that way as well. So there is no one answer to this, but it's for you to discover this, and it's your own journey as well. So there are some wonderful women, whether they're with children or without children. Just remember that. And it's really easy to get lost in, especially in modern day social media, that this dating world is horrible. It's a challenge because you will see and you'll be confronted with a lot of different types of psychology and human behavior. And some of it is very ugly, and it's easy to remember the ugly side of it. We're all guilty of this. I've done this many times as well. So remember, there is no one perfect solution, but you've got to find your own solution. Guys, if you've enjoyed the Nice Guy Show, please check out episode number 75, Commitment Crisis, Why Men Are Avoiding Relationships and Staying Single. And if you've enjoyed this, please, again, thank you for being part of this, and watch and do comment, do share. And what's your opinion? What do you think? Should you be dating single women? Have you dated single women? What was your experience like? Do share that, and also share this podcast to other guys who need to hear this message. Until the next time.